So I had a presentation set or a topic set that I was going to discuss today. It was basically rooted in the news and things that's going on in the news in terms of people who are attacking non-Trump supporters, which would leave African Americans, Jewish people, any minorities vulnerable. There's a man who attacked some people in Walmart, had a shooting in Walmart. He also tried to enter a black church. So it would behoove us to be on guard in our masjids, because more, I guess, than any other religion, our religion is demonized and misunderstood. So we should stay on guard for our brothers and for our sisters, for our children, for ourselves. Pipe bombs were sent to political figures, entertainment figures, anybody who was prominent, who had spoken out against Donald Trump or who was his opponent. And then yesterday there was a shooting at a synagogue, if I understand correctly. And they were saying anti-Semitic things, and they seem to be Trump supporters. With the evidence showing it seems to be the case. So with that in mind, there were also several reports coming out about people, Muslims in China, who are being oppressed, being getting their religious freedoms taken away from them. And this has been going on for years. Well, during Ramadan, they have been trying to discourage them or dissuade them from fasting, from making salat, from doing the pillars of al-Islam. And I was thinking about, what can Muslims do? As I think about this, I thought about also the journalist in Saudi Arabia who was attacked and apparently dismembered. And I was thinking about the people who are the custodians of our most religious sites, and what are they representing us correctly? And with Muslims in China, and there being almost 2 billion Muslims on earth, why wouldn't they come to the aid of those Muslims in China, or to the aid of the Palestinians who have been persecuted for 50, 60, in my perspective, maybe 100 years, because Zionism, or the beginning of Zionism, began in the late 1800s, or the late 1800s, and it was continually perpetuated until we have the state of Israel today. So I don't think it was 1948 when the state of Israel came into existence, but before then, because up until then there were massacres and oppression and things going on of that nature. Meanwhile, we have the people who are the custodians of the most sacred places in al-Islam, who are dancing with Donald Trump. And he is supporting them, they are supporting him. He explicitly said, Islam hates us. Islam hates us, not this percentage of Muslims hates us, or this people over here, or that. He said Islam. That means every Muslim. So in essence and in fact, he vilified every Muslim on earth. Yet the princes and kings are dancing with him. They are his friends, his supporters, and are their supporters. That's why he was so reluctant to admit that they had killed a journalist for saying something contrary to their administration. So with that said, I was thinking about these things and what I wanted to say about Muslims, about African American people, because I am a member of both African American and Muslim. And we seem to be persecuted on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And what can we do? Because it seems our impotence is fueling our persecution, fueling our oppression. The more we do nothing, the more they oppress us. The more they attack us, the more they vilify us, the more they make us out to be the people who are criminals when we in fact are the victims. And I was talking to a brother yesterday who might describe himself as militant. So I told him about this and I said, you know, in the Quran it explicitly talks about people who persecute you and try to stop you from practicing your religion. And Allah explicitly tells you to fight those people, right? So his response to me was something that I was not expecting. He said, this is their country. Let's say in China or wherever, and in America, these things are happening to us. What did the prophets do when they were being persecuted? He said many of them left and went to places so they can have sanctuary or sanctitude and serenity. And this was in total opposition to what I was going to say and what I was thinking. Musa left. Him and the children of Israel left the Pharaoh. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to Medina. He came. He built his haven there. Then he came back to Mecca. Jonah ran away when Allah asked him to be a prophet and go to Nineveh. Noah built an ark, left. You know. So maybe that is something that we need to consider. You know, we should go somewhere where people look like us, think like us, and act like us. He said, if I was a Chinese and I was in leadership, I wouldn't want y'all Muslims in there either. So he said, and we build a Muslim country, we're going to have rules and regulations about how people live and govern themselves there. We won't be we shouldn't be obviously as rigid. We should have freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of the press. You know, we shouldn't kill journalists for saying something that is contrary to what we believe in. But there will be parameters around our existence, our governing ourselves and people that are under our governance. So, with that said, and the fact that we talked for hours, we opened the halal store, by the way, is around the corner there. We almost opened it and we stayed there until it closed. We're outside talking just about Islam in general and about things because, you know, most of your friends are non-Muslim, right? So they don't have the same conversations that you have. They don't have the same sensitivities that you have. So when you get a chance to sit down with a Muslim brother or sister and you get to talk to them about religion, it'll last all day. It can last all day because you think about things that you experience, things that your kids may experience, your wife may experience, the people in your community may experience, and it can go on all day. So we were in there talking all day. The owner came, was actually a Muslim who was helped in the Arabic class, and you know, he asked us what can he do to improve the menu and everything. I mean, it's a halal store, so I've been there probably 5 times, and it's right around the corner from my house. So I've tried to advertise them on Facebook. They actually come to Juma here, and they were the ones that give the pizzas. If you remember, they have the Sal's Pizza Shop. So he said he had been gone. He been on a little hiatus. He wanted to be with his family a little bit more, but he was going to come back, try to come back on Sundays during the Arabic classes. But with that said, that kind of changed my subject today. So in thinking of what I wanted to discuss today, I was thinking about our Arabic class yesterday and an attribute of Allah, which is, let me see if I say this right, Al-Ghani, which means the rich or the independent or the one without need. He is self-sustaining. And we were talking about Abu Lahab, and that that Allah says that the wealth and the things that he had wouldn't be able to sustain him. Those things, the wealth and what he had gained with his hands would not be sufficient for him. He would still be in the hellfire ultimately. And in looking up that, I saw in Surah Al-Alaq about when Allah says, and man transgresses because he thinks himself self-sufficient. So I was thinking about the people who have left religion, people who are feeling that they don't need religion. There have been several articles about people who have left the church. I mean, we're in a Christian country, so generally the articles about church, not necessarily about Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, or Al-Islam. So their main focus generally on all the articles that I was seeing was about Catholicism or about Christianity. So obviously with the scandals going on in Catholicism, they have an issue with people not coming to church and saying they're non-religious or not affiliating themselves with any religion. And millennials particularly, since we have one here, we may be able to tap into his expertise, have been less involved in religion. Fortunately, last night a brother of mine, one of the younger brothers that came in here, emailed, or he sent me a message saying that he wanted to meet up with me, maybe we can go out and eat. He said he wanted to be around some people so he can gain some knowledge and understanding of this religion. It seemed to me that he was saying the people in the circle weren't people that were sufficient in giving him the knowledge or the understanding that he was yearning for. So I'm going to see if I can make it my duty to be more engaged with him. I think he lives in Portsmouth, but I'll do whatever I can to make sure that he's engaged. We had a couple of people who came in here before that were younger. One of them was 17. He came in once. I haven't seen him since. But the reason, they said, they had several reasons why millennials are not coming or being registering themselves as non-affiliates. The first reason was they don't believe in the religious teachings. They said about 60% of the people that they tested said they don't believe in the teachings of the religious teachings. The next percentage of them, I think it was 30%, said their parents weren't really religious, so they didn't have any religious affiliation. And then it went on to talk about religion had become too political. But then they said about 1/3, 2/3 of them actually still believe in God. They just didn't have any religious affiliation. So this is just for the millennials. Now when we're speaking about people in general, it says the reason has to do with the fact that people generally stay single longer and don't get married, because they said there's a direct correlation between religion and believing in God and being married. The next thing they said was people are less fertile. They have less children. The more children you have, the more likely you are to be religious and go to church and be affiliated with your community and the community's church and church services or mosque or synagogue or what have you. And the last thing was they said that people just say they're non-affiliates. They believe in God, but they don't have any relation with God. Now, my opinion on that, or my reasoning, has to do with something that started hundreds of years ago. Dr. Wilder gave a talk on Africa, or Islam in Africa, Al-Islam in Africa, and then she was talking about the difference between European culture and African culture. She said in African culture, everything, all the resources that they needed were right around them. So they didn't have the same inclinations or the same desires as people in Europe. So the people in Europe, when the winters were colder, they had to hoard things. They had to store things. So acquisition was very important in their society. So if acquisition is important in your society and storing things is important in your society, and there is a point when you don't have resources, then you may take it from the other person, or you may hoard everything that you own. And this is quite in contrast to Africans. who had everything at their fingertips. So they didn't have to worry about hoarding things or getting food or getting water or getting any of those things when they're right there at their fingertips, which means they were more inclined towards family values, more inclined towards spirituality, because they had more time to concentrate on those things instead of being hungry and wanting food and shelter and all of those things. So with that said, when religion is introduced into Europe, at least at that point into the age in which they were being barbaric, at that point they were taught religion, they were taught about Christianity, but it was something of what it is today. It's something that is an acquisition. So they are looking to God to give them something or make sure they keep something. So in doing so, when they travel the world, they feel that everything, acquisition is important to them. So they go to this country, conquer this country, take their resources, and they say, these people don't believe in the same God I do, so they are inferior to me. And they did this throughout the world. You see the contrast with the Native Americans, the Africans, who didn't have that same complex because they already had everything at their fingertips. But because, and we have this today in what is called the prosperity gospel. So people go to church because they feel like, I'm poor, I need money. If I pray to God and I believe in God, he'll give me this money. He'll give me these resources. And this is what they gave Africans, because we didn't think this way as well. Even as, the Africans as slaves, we felt if we pray to God, then he'll give us give us this freedom. When in fact, they don't understand the purpose of religion, period, or the purpose of praying. So religion is not for God to give you stuff, right? It's a deen, it's a way of life, meaning that everything you do and say is predicated on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving you this guide, this test of how you should live your life. So me and my sons on Tuesday, we were talking about someone who said they didn't believe in God. And my middle son said the reason he didn't believe in God was something that he thought was trivial, something that he didn't think made sense. So I asked both of them about what do you think religion is, or being religious is? Because when someone says you're religious, they have some negative connotation about it. They think it means something like you holier than thou or something. But being religious in our religion means that you do what's right. So when you say, I'm being religious, you mean I don't smoke, I don't drink, I pray to God, I give charity, I try to have some brotherhood with other people, some empathy, some sympathy with other people. If that's religious, that is absolutely what I am. But if you say it as religious, it sounds negative. It has some negative connotation. But if you say I am doing what's right, I am being righteous, that means the opposition to that is being wicked. So when we say it in its proper context, we realize that what we are doing is what God has ordained for us to do, which is basic and simple. Righteousness means doing what is right, meaning doing something that's beneficial to you and to every other person, or to the environment, or to the plant life, the animal life, the life in the ocean. All these things are doing what is right. Doing what is wrong is doing something that may be beneficial to you, to me, but is harmful to you, or harmful to someone else, or harmful to the environment, or harmful to the plant life, the animal life, all those things. It's basic and simple. This entire world, this entire life is in black and white. People make it gray because they want to do something that's beneficial to their own interests. But ultimately, it's plain and simple to see how this life should be led. Now, doing what is righteous has nothing to do with getting as much wealth as you can. So going back to the attribute of Allah, it means being independent, being free from want, free from anything. You don't need anything. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a being that doesn't need anything. We will always be in some need, no matter how much money, how much wealth we have. So I can't remember this guy's name, but he wrote on Black Theology, and he said that he felt that white people were losing their religion because they had too much material, too much faith. So they lost he said the whites in America and mostly around the world were losing their faith because they had the material wealth, so they didn't look to God for anything, because they felt that acquisition is what God gives you. So if you got everything you need, if you're rich, why would I pray to God? And then this same mentality was passed down to African American people. So we feel we got a bunch of faith. If we pray enough to God, He's gonna give us these riches. He's gonna take us out of this oppression and give us prosperity. When in fact, Allah helps those who help themselves, right? So the entire point of this, and the same thing is true with prayer. So people think, I got several friends that say they don't pray. They don't want to pray because I don't want to beg God for something. When we pray, all right, salat, first of all, is a worship. We're not saying, please God. We're saying, please God, guide us. We're not saying, please God, give me $100 million. That's dua. You can ask God to help you get a bunch of money, or ask God to get you out of this situation. But ultimately, we want guidance. Guide us to the right path, to be as righteous as possible, not to be. So our prayer or our salat is not for acquisition. The only thing we're trying to acquire is blessings from God to make sure that we are being righteous, the most righteous as possible. So when people make acquisition and prosperity gospel something that is something to strive for, ultimately when they get it, they have less faith in God. And then the other thing that they gave, and the reason why several people who are the white Americans are moving away from it, has to do with the false image that they gave. So they gave this image of Jesus as God. Now, if you're on any social media for any amount of time, you will find something disparaging about Christianity. And I almost make it a part of my duty to try to respond to that, because I don't subscribe to people attacking Christianity because of what slave masters did or because of what some evil person did. Adolf Hitler was a Christian. If he had a consensus form, he would say Christian. But that doesn't mean Christianity is wrong because he killed 6 million Jews. You know what I mean? So people are doing this, and once they do that, they'll do the same thing to Al-Islam. They will say, well, this Muslim here killed a journalist, so Islam is false, right? Which is totally false and illogical. But if you allow them to do it there, then they'll do it in other places. So social media, in fact, the educational system in general is anti-religion. That's the other reason why millennials are being dissuaded from religion. So as I said before, the main reason was they don't believe in religious teachings. So first, where are they getting religious teachings from if they don't go to church? They're getting it from social media, who already says they don't believe in the religion. So they're getting it from somebody who's anti-Christian about Christianity. In the same way, people learn about Al-Islam from people who hate Islam. So our duty is to teach people about the real way of life. The real way of life is to be as righteous as you can. And when you be as righteous as you can, you do get prosperity. You do get blessings. When you do what Allah tells you to do, you won't live in oppression. I asked my middle son, I asked both my sons, how do these two groups, African Americans and Muslims, get out of oppression? And he said, when they realize that the oppression or the persecution that they're feeling is more important to them than their life. And he didn't know this, but he was basically quoting the Quran. Allah says oppression is worse than death. So when you realize, first, when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes out to preach, or was giving dawah, and every prophet, according to the Quran, they taught about oneness of God and the hereafter. Meaning there's one God who is giving you the rules of how you live your life, and that life that you live will ultimately be judged, and you will live forever in bliss, or you will be condemned to punishment for the life that you live. So it's basically saying just those two things are telling you that there's a creator and you're going to be held accountable for everything you ever did. Unless you repent for it or do something to make amends for it, then you're going to be punished for those things that you did. So the life that we teach people about Al-Islam is something that is simple. It's basic. Anyone of any understanding, unless you have some mental deficiency, should be able to understand this. But ultimately, this life is what we are living. It has nothing to do with seeing if you can get $1 million, or seeing if you can get a really big house. The mansion, the house that you're trying to get is in paradise. So we ultimately know that we have a future to look for. We have a goal to reach, but that's ultimately in paradise. And that, again, is not to say that we don't get the riches in this life. Because if you are righteous, I don't know if I mentioned this before, like every job that I've ever had, I've always, if people who are on the same level as me, I'm able to have more money than them. I'll be able to acquire more things than them because they smoke, and they drink, they party. I don't do that with my money. So I buy things that are important to me. I buy food, I buy those things I buy a house. When I had no money, or I had very little money, I was able to feed myself and give myself a decent amount of clothes because I didn't use my wealth for things that are non-godly or ungodly. So with being righteous comes the most benefit. You live a longer life when you don't smoke or drink. You live a longer life. You are less depressed when you believe in God and you understand that He has a goal for you, and you will ultimately be judged for what you do. And if you do what is right, then you ultimately have a calmer heart, a calmer mind. People drink and smoke because they are depressed, because they don't know what they're going to do next, because they don't understand this life that they're living. So they are trying to drink away their problems, trying to smoke away their problems, or entertain themselves away from the reality of the life that they live. They don't like the life they live because they don't know why they're living this life. But ultimately, we have the ability to tell them, show them how to live the best life, and show them that they are still in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though He is not in need of them. And He's giving them everything they need in terms of living the most righteous life so they can have the largest mansion that they want to have in paradise, and as much as they are willing to earn in this life, they are also able to gain prosperity here. Excuse me. So ultimately, people who are leaving religion need to be taught what is true and what is right. If there are people who are every day saying things that are in opposition to religion, saying things that are in opposition to believing in God and worshiping God, then we should be out there saying what is right and what is beneficial in that, because ultimately they have an empty life. They know there is a fitrah in each and every one of us. So if they don't have that void with what is true, then something will fill it. Whether it is some falsehood, whether it's some drug, whether it is some sin, or whatever it is, something is going to fill it. So we should be filling it with al-Islam. We should be, the other thing that is a goal that I'm trying to accomplish is trying to give people this message and then go on to the next person. Instead of stopping and saying, okay, let me explain this to you. If they want more of an explanation, then obviously I will explain it to them, but I've always felt like if I keep explaining it, then they will understand. So I know this is a shortcoming of mine, but when talking to the brother yesterday, he said he lived next door to a Muslim. The Muslim told him about al-Islam, and it didn't really resonate. He just remembered it. Then he went somewhere else. Years later, he saw this brother who was praying or something. It drew his interest, but he still didn't believe in al-Islam. At one point, he was actually an atheist. He went to Bahrain and saw people praying on the streets. He called his wife. He said, we got to be Muslims. Whatever they're doing, we need to do it. And it was probably because of the seed that was planted by the person who lived next door to him. But maybe if the guy next door to him kept beating him over the head, he might have never became a Muslim. But that seed is all that he needed, and then Allah is the best of planners, right? He knew what it took to make this person become a Muslim. And this person, because of him being a Muslim, he's drawn other people to be Muslim. People in his family, people, friends of his become Muslim, because he has this same thing of, I can show you what I do. I can be a good example. If you ask me any questions, then I can elaborate on them, or I can guide you in the right direction. But he did have the problem also of trying to convince people of things, but he's grown out of it. So hopefully I'll grow out of this same thing too. Because I realized that everything could be just a small seed. One thing you say. In fact, this week, a really good friend of mine told me, he said, if I go to heaven I'm going to thank you. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, we had a conversation, I don't know, it was probably a month ago. He said he had stopped believing in God or questioning whether God really existed. With all the things that are happening to African Americans throughout history, it made him question the existence of God. And some conversation I had, some words I said, I don't even remember, to be honest with you, all the things I told him. But whatever it was, it resonated enough with him to say, I believe in God now. Not that he's a Muslim, but he'd gone from here to here, you know, because of a conversation that I had with him. And I said, alhamdulillah, everything that I told you came from somebody else who told me, who ultimately comes from Allah. All the truth comes from Allah. I'm just a conduit to be able to tell you what I learned. And this seems to happen to me oftentimes when I feel like I'm at my wit's end. Like, I'm tired of telling people. This stuff is, what I'm telling you is the truth, right? Man, you don't want to hear it. So my father once told me, he said, giving dawah to non-Muslims is a young man's job. he said, I'm trying to help Muslims understand al-Islam. But people who don't understand al-Islam, that's your job. You do that. Now, maybe I'm getting too old to be doing it. But, so every time I feel that way, though, somebody comes and says, you know what, something you said to me, you know, I thought about it and it really resonated. This just happened this Thursday. A couple of years ago, something very similar happened to me. A brother from Africa said he read my book. Somebody gave him my book and he read it and he was like, this is the truth. He said, everybody need to read this. I'm like, you just don't know. I had almost lost hope in humanity. Because I mean, I'm like, well, I'm telling you 1 + 1 = 2 and you won't listen to me. You know what I mean? So with that said, that's all I really had today to discuss. If you have any questions, anything you want to mention, anything you want to talk about, feel free.
I was going to say, like you said, you would be at your last people.
Mm-hmm.
Always, in the Quran, I always tell you, Allah says, be patient and consistency.
Mm-hmm.
That's what carries me, I see all the bad things going around us, but Allah always says, be patient and consistency. And like you were saying, I gave you that surah the other week. I don't know if you remember reading about Noah's son. Came to Noah, you know what I'm saying? Now, when Noah saw his son, he said, hey man, why don't you get on this mountain? Hey man, that mountain ain't gonna save you, you know. There was more to it, you know.
Which says what? He's a prophet of God, receiving revelation, and his son doesn't listen to him, which means he does not do the convincing. It is Allah and that son or that person's inclination towards doing what is right. So no matter how many times I hit them over the head and say this, it doesn't matter. If they don't want to hear, if there's a block in between their hearing and what I'm saying, it doesn't matter. If Allah doesn't want them to receive that and they are not willing to receive it, it doesn't matter how many times I say it. But what you said about patience and perseverance is what I was talking about last week, right? So last week, we're talking about names. Ismail is known for patience and perseverance. So that's what I should be striving for. And I'm trying to strive more for. So with that said, again, if you have any questions, anything, let me know.
You was talking about the brother you was talking with, and he was expressing his opinion about I guess it was teaching of Islam, but he's one of the brothers from another community. Yeah, he's goes to a masjid in Atlanta. That's Imam Muhammad's community as well. I don't remember the name of the masjid. He sent me a picture of it. He showed me a picture of it yesterday. But it was just a different perspective of what, I was thinking, like every Muslim should gather together to help people that are being oppressed, which I still think is the case, but sometimes you may consider that leaving is also an alternative, When I was younger, people always said to me, you don't like, you want everybody to be Muslim, you're upset about America fighting different wars and all those things, why don't you just go somewhere else? And I said, I'm not running away, I'm gonna stay here, I'm gonna try to change things. But now when I got older, I said, I don't wanna die, I wanna die somewhere where people look like me and think like me. So ultimately, when I'm gone from here, if Allah wills, it will be somewhere in Africa with Muslims. You know what I mean? I just feel like I've had enough of being around people who don't believe what I'm saying or care about what I care about. So I at least live my golden ages around people who think like me. And there are people who've said that that's sometimes it's a detriment though, to be around people all the time who think like you, because you never get to understand or feel any different perspectives. You know, so if you're born in a Muslim country and everybody around you is Muslim, you never question anything. So when you go to America and somebody asks you about Islam, you don't have any answers. You might be able to read the Quran backwards and forwards, but you don't know why you believe in what you believe in. In fact, the brother that came to our Arabic class and an imam around here said they both had an enlightenment in the middle of their life. They were Muslim. They made 5 prayers a day. They did all those things, but they weren't conscious Muslims until one day they were reading and then they had this epiphany. This is actually true. It's not just some culture of mine or performance that I do. I'm doing this because Allah wanted me to do this, and this stuff is really true. So even people, you know, that's been Muslim their whole life, one day they may realize, you know what, I'm a conscious Muslim. Because, you know, we're all unconscious Muslims, you know, or we're striving to be. And then ultimately, it even happens to people who've been Muslim their whole life. And, you know, that's really intriguing, but it's also speaks to the validity of this religion, you know, that it's ever reaffirming your belief and your iman and building your iman. With learning Arabic, I was telling the brother I was telling you about yesterday that in learning Arabic, just the little bit that I've learned has helped build my iman, because you realize the things that Allah is trying to tell you, even in the most simple things, or the things that you think are simple, that you look over every single day. But those things are important and they mean something. Allah, it's a message in every little word, everything that Allah is saying. Whether, like, for example, I knew the surah about the abundance, and then the brother came in and explained about the abundance and the importance of it. I mean, I knew the surah when I was a child just because it's 3 ayahs, but and then people will say, you know, everything that is in the Quran has some more significance than just what meets the surface. And then you find out it's about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when his son died, and the people are basically insulting him because his son's died and say you don't have any lineage to carry on, and Allah is promising him that they are the ones that's going to lose. You're going to get blessings in abundance, blessings beyond your wildest belief, you know. So it's all of those things. You think it could be something that seems simple to you, but then it's really a story behind it that you don't know unless you delve deeper into it. And the deeper you dive into it, the more you are convinced that this is the truth. I mean, I didn't think I could be more convinced, to be honest with you. I was like, I know it's the truth, you know, that's it. But then you find out more things, you're like, what? I mean, like, I'm amazed every couple of weeks by something new that I didn't know before.
You know, that's why, you know, Allah bless us. And then I tell you to read the Quran every day,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so you get something. You know, if you just read it once a week or once, you need to try to read it every day.
So I used to read it every day. I'm sorry, not every day. I used to read it all the time in English.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Sister Jeanette and the passion that she has down to different words and different phrases, and she knew where the words, she knew the surah, the ayah, just from a little phrase. I'm like, I thought I knew about this book. Like, this lady knows this thing, you know, and her passion makes me more passionate, you know, it makes me want to learn some more. You know, there are few teachers that, you know, inspire you to do more or go further beyond, and she definitely does that. She gets you to understand that the English translation is not sufficient. It's sufficient for people who don't understand Islam, but if you want to get a deeper understanding, if you want to build your iman to the fullest potential, and you learn that thing in Arabic and you learn what Allah is saying, it's a different level.
That puts you on a higher level.
And then this is the thing, is that the Quran means the recitation, so you want to be able to recite it. You know what I mean? It's not just a book. So Allah talks about it as a book, but ultimately it's called the recitation. The words you say resonate. They mean something. They vibrate into other people. The brother I was talking about yesterday, he said they were doing in the masjid, the kids would come in there and do a recitation of a short surah. And he said he heard them all. Then he was sitting with his wife, and a few minutes later he bust out crying and didn't know why. And he said He said the surahs that they were saying, I don't even know, right? I didn't know what they were saying. And then that brought me to the thing about something I mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about DNA and your memory can be passed down to your kids and your kids' kids, which means what Adam knew, right? So Allah taught Adam the names of everything, which is the names and descriptions of everything. So that could possibly resonate down to us. So maybe he subconsciously knew what they were saying, or his soul had a feeling towards what was being said, and maybe his ancestors were Muslim, and whatever was said vibrated in his soul, and the man said he was crying profusely and couldn't explain it and couldn't stop. You know, then Allah, says this in the Quran, and people hear it and start crying. Like, men didn't know what they said. He couldn't tell you what they said. He said it wasn't a surah that I knew. I know, he knows surahs for prayer, but it wasn't a surah he knew, and he doesn't know Arabic. Like, he was crying uncontrollably.
The reason I kind of asked that question, because at times over the years when I'm around the African American Muslims that's in the other communities, not like like they form their own community. They more so talk all the time about making hijrah, about leaving this country.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Like that. It's constantly like,
it's definitely something to think about. That's what I'm saying. And I told him this. I said, I knew all of this, but I never considered that was a possibility, or that was an option, or something that we should explore, And then Allah says this also when he talks about people who are being oppressed. He said, didn't I make this earth spacious for you? He says this explicitly. So obviously, if you're in a situation where you can't travel, then you should fight oppression. But he gives you the option, you can leave. Don't sit here and take it. Allah says, I made this earth spacious for you, right? So if you're able to go, maybe you should.
Just like you were saying about the other countries, and just like here in America, Christianity is the most religion here in America. But still, you go to all the other places and see they're Islam. See, it's just like the Christians here. You know what I'm saying?
It's true.
For granted. See, take us, we don't have it as, fluent as they do over there, but we are taught to cherish it more so than they do.
That is definitely true.
This is where we at now. So whether we go over there or go away, I don't care where you go. Allah wants us to be patient and consistent with what we got to, so we can bring it to the people. I don't care where you go, we're gonna have to do the same thing.
For certain.
Like I said, you see how they come over here. They love to come over here because they change it. They hold the demeanor change. Look at the sisters now. They want to drive. They learned that.
So we were talking about that last night. So they're doing a reverse hijrah. They're leaving the Muslim country to come to a non-Muslim country.
See, that's because, Imam Muhammad went over there with all that language, and it changed that whole country. I think his influence had a lot to do with it. Because, it wasn't an individual born over there with the teaching that Imam Muhammad.
I think what he helped people do is what I was talking about, is that you think with use your own aql, use your own reasoning and knowledge and understanding, and you can get to the truth of this religion. You don't need someone dictating something to you and saying, this is what it means, because we are all individually different, we see things different, so it's not a sin to say, I see this differently than you. Or I see this differently than somebody who's been a Muslim their entire life. Like he was just saying, is something we cherish more because we just got it. Like, oh man, this thing is great. Somebody who was born into it might take it for granted. They've been Muslim their whole life. And then one day they may realize, you know what, I shouldn't be taking this for granted. But you're more likely to if you've been doing it your whole life. But when you meet a new Muslim, I mean, they're like, they're exuberant, they're vibrant. You can feel what they're feeling. You know, it makes you excited because they're getting something new and they're excited to learn something new. That's why I told you when the brother sent me that, I said, I definitely got to go tell him something. Or, I mean, be around him more and have him come here more. Because every time he does, he'll help invigorate us. He'll put something into our veins and say, you know what? This is what we have here. Look what it did to this young brother. He's 19, 20 years old. Around a bunch of people who are not thinking about God at all, ever. They're drinking, smoking, having fun, partying. In the middle of all those people is a young man who wants to know about Al-Islam, who wants to know more about God and doing stuff to please God. I mean, if that doesn't invigorate you, if that doesn't rejuvenate you, then nothing else will, you know, and that's exactly what you're saying there. And I think a lot of that has to do with, I mean, I think that it personifies itself in people that come to Jumu'ah here, you know. They know that we love this deen, you know. They can see it, they can feel it, you know. I asked the brother about going to Morocco. He was like, you don't want to move to Morocco if you want to be a Muslim. I'm like, it's a place full of Muslims. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying.
So it just reinforces the idea that because they're in a Muslim country or they've been Muslim their entire life, doesn't mean that that's somebody you should look up to, or you should not look up to, but someone you should think is more knowledgeable than you or more of a Muslim than you. And the more we are, as the generation grows though, you know, I can't learn everything there is to learn. My son knows far more Arabic than I do. I read the Quran in English. This brother here is reading in Arabic. So he knows what Allah is saying. I know what Yusuf Ali told me he's saying. You know what I'm saying? So it should just get better and better, you know? So there is always hope and there's always a path that is going to lead to more prosperity, but Allah helps those who helps themselves. You make the effort towards it, then He will definitely bless you. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to comment a little bit on. I forgot what exactly you said. It was like acquiescent, something like that. Like you're trying to get something out of religion. Like people
acquisition.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they want to get. Oh, I just wanted to go a little further on that. Like when I do think about that a lot. Like in most, I'd say just about all religions actually. It seems that a lot of them are more centered around like what people want and like. Because like, all right, for example, like most other religions, like including Christianity, Judaism, even Hinduism, all those religions, they don't really they've like changed dramatically over the years based on like what people thought like their religion ought to be like.
Mm-hmm.
So like you hear people saying stuff like, oh, Islam is still the same way it was when Prophet Muhammad was there. Why don't you guys like change it? Can't you guys just like take some parts out? People say that, or like, can't you just take some parts out of the Quran that like, you know, do you have to pray 5 times a day? Like, do you really need to do that? You just take the hijab out of the Quran, all that stuff. And I don't know, it makes me like a little more, no, not more confident in Islam, I don't believe in it, but like it kind of boosts my iman because it's like, there's really no other religion like Islam that's like stayed like the same in like the fundamental principles.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no one really came, of course there were like small little sects that came to try to change things, but for the most part, Muslims have always been like, we didn't try to make Islam conform, we conformed to Islam type thing.
And when you say this, right, the first thing I think about was that last week, the brother wanted to know if we can change the Jumu'ah to 1 o'clock. Right? And Jumu'ah is Lord. Now, it's understandable. You know, you're in a non-Muslim country, people are working, or most people are working on Friday, but it's permissible, but it's better to do it during Dhuhr. That's the right time to do it. Right? You know what I mean? So, I don't know, that's just one small point. I think maybe it may not exactly parallel to what you're saying, but that's what we should always try to do, is try to stay as close to the practices of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as possible. Obviously, in a society that is not conducive to our religion, we have to conform. There are some places that you just can't pray in, because there are so much things going on around you, so you want to make salat somewhere else, or make salat when you go home, or make up the prayer or something like that. You can't just do different, whatever that thing may be. You may not be able to practice it to its full potential because we live in a different country. I mean, in a country that's non-Muslim. But ultimately, like you said, it's been uniform for 1,400 years, and that is something we should be proud of. You can say they don't necessarily believe in their religion. They like if the religion conforms to what you think, then it can change from person to person. Now, with Judaism, it's all, a rabbi once said that this is the case, is that Moses and Abraham questioned God. So they, according to the Jewish Torah, so they have a tradition of questioning God. So they don't have a problem with saying, I don't know if God was right about this.
What does the Quran say about that when Abraham did go?
Exactly. And at first Abraham wasn't even questioning Allah. He was talking to the angel, right? And that's the other thing, the other side of the coin. But the same thing is true with Christianity. You have 42 books in the Old Testament, and then you got 27 in the New Testament. These whole Old Testament, they say you don't have to listen to any of that, right? That's what God said, though. God said these words, but don't worry about them. Jesus says, man may not live by bread alone, but by every word from God. Everyone. All of these words. So you can't just throw this one away. If you can prove this is not from God, then we shouldn't even have it anyway, right? And then, so if every word of God means, what else he say after that? Because there's nothing to say, listen, we're going to stop talking to y'all now. In fact, Jesus himself says somebody coming after you is going to lead you into all truth. So if they actually took heed to the words that are being said, then they'll be led to the correct path. But we have something different in every aspect. We believe that these are the words given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Literally, they're literally God's words. They don't believe that about the Bible. They believe someone was inspired and they wrote what they was inspired by, not that God told them to say these words. So Paul specifically says, he said, God didn't direct me on this matter. I'm telling you what I think. So when I get up here and tell you what I think, right, I make sure I say this, but they have it literally in the book that they call is from God, the man's thoughts and opinions.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference, a huge advantage that we have, but people don't know about it. And then, like I said, the millennials, their parents aren't religious, so they can't tell them anything. They can't explain anything to them, so they learn everything they need to know about religion from people who hate religion.
I was about to say, what you said about the Bible being like the inspired word. I remember I heard like some quote. It was like, if you take 5 guys named John and ask them if the Bible is the word of God, you get like one maybe saying it is, and you have to be like a really, really hardcore conservative guy. But if you get 10 guys named Ahmed or 10 women named Fatima, and you ask them if the Quran is the word of God, all of them are going to say yes. It could be a drug dealer named Ahmed, and he's going to say, yeah, the Quran is the word of God.
For certain. That's
whether he's following up.
Following or not, he knows.
That's what it is.
Exactly. That's pretty funny, but pretty profound,
He like, when Imam Muhammad first came on, the scene, like, after his father passed away, and it's called Imam Muhammad Mujaddid. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it Mujaddid?
Yeah, it's Mujaddid.
Yeah, Mujaddid. The revival of the religion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they call him, And he brought, matter of fact, he opened up the Quran for us, with his teaching from the Quran with the Arabic language. So he taught us, that's why, man, years ago, we used to be on the carpet all day long. I mean, we would go in and, we would stand up there and make him, do our prayer time.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to stand in there, and we used to sit in there all day long till about 5 or 6 o'clock. And he used to be teaching. I mean, literally teaching.
This is I was going to mention what you were saying. So from some of the, I think Imam was talking about this because I had him do a presentation. Imam Fareed was I had him do a presentation on the Nation of Islam. He said they didn't mix a lot. He said he didn't read the Quran. They had the Quran up here, you know, and he was the one that brought it down. Imam Muhammad, and had people reading it, saying, this is the words of God right here. This is what you're supposed to be reciting when you make your salat. This is what God said. You know, so as you said, he did not only revive it, he introduced it to some people who didn't know about it at all, whether they were Muslim or non-Muslim. My next thing I want to do is, you know, I have the table out there, is I need to find out, I have my son researching it, I wonder if he found out where I can get a bunch of Qurans. Because what better to give people than Qurans? I talked to him about it. I know brother Shakir had those small ones as well.
This guy here.
Oh, he's right there? If we can get some more, I would definitely want to get as many as possible and have them out there. If people walk past, they can take a Quran with them, because I wouldn't say it's a snake in the grass, but it's like, what is it that Allah says about the Torah? He said the Torah to some people is like a donkey carrying a treasure on his back. Now, if that's what the Torah is, then think of what the treasure is that the Quran is. So even if someone takes it and doesn't read it, and they keep it in their house, somebody will be interested in, like, what's this book right here? You know, it could be their son, could be their uncle, could be their sister, their daughter, whomever. They would never know what it says without me giving it to them, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to start giving out Qur'ans.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be in D.C. is where you're supposed to be able to get them, free.
Okay. For sure.
I don't know if that seemed like the embassy or somewhere in Washington, D.C. So that's
Thank you, brother.
lead. Call somebody that's already in the mosque there in D.C. and maybe they can know where they.
Because we have literature and all those things, but what would be better than the actual, you know? It's this brother I used to listen to a lot who was, he was a Christian, he was like a theologian. He never was I don't think he was ever a minister, but he went to school to understand Christian theology. And he said he would question all the time different people about Christianity, and he said, why do you believe this when it's not in the Quran? Then one day someone gave him, when it's not in the Bible, I'm sorry. Then one day someone gave him a Quran, and he said it wasn't even a good translation of the Quran. He said it was kind of bad, to be honest with you. But when he read it, he was like, this is what I've been saying the whole time. You know, and he became a Muslim almost immediately. He said the first thing he did was went to some Muslims, though. And he said the Muslim told him something crazy to do, almost turned him off. But he's a Muslim now because he read the Quran and it was like, this is what I've been thinking about all the time. This is what I thought was true, that if it doesn't say it in the book, why are you doing it? You know, and if Allah didn't tell you to do it, why would you even put that as a part of your religion? He was talking about like the divinity of Jesus and how Christians pray, all of those things. And he said he used to question people all the time. He said, I'm a student of theology. I know it's not in there. Why you believe in the Trinity? It's not in there. You know, Jesus didn't say he was God. Why you believe it? Then he reads the Quran and says, don't say God is 3 in 1. Jesus is not God. All the things that he'd been telling them this whole time. You know, and he didn't even I can say he never heard of Islam, but he had never seen the Quran until one was introduced to him and became a Muslim right there.
But, you know, I always go back and I said, what did Adam and Abraham and all them believe in before Jesus came about? So, you know, and then they didn't call them believers, they was called themselves believers. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they was believers.
There's a parable that is attributed to Jesus in the Bible. I think it was talking about the vineyard, and they were talking about, it was a parable that was saying different messengers came to these people, teaching them the same message over and over again. And it ultimately was saying that he was the last one that was coming to them, but he was delivering the same message. But somehow they made it different. They said, well, he was saying something different. He was saying, I'm die for your sins and I'm God. They never said any of that, right? They said in the parable, they're giving the exact same message, and the people keep rejecting it. Talking about the children of Israel. It's the same message. Why would he go through, why would God wait 400 years and then take you a different message than what they've been teaching you this whole time?
You know, the same thing with, you know, when I asked Jesus, and then, you know, the question was asked to Jesus, you know, did you teach these people? I you would have known.
When I started reading the Quran, I love that so much because it's putting Jesus on trial, and Jesus said, I definitely didn't say that, and you know, you would know if I said it. You know I didn't say that. and that's scary. That should be scary though. That's the other thing why you should give this to non-Muslims, particularly Christians. Make them at least maybe think, like the person that I'm praying to might be testifying against me, saying I didn't tell him that.
We used to go to a convention, you know, Muhammad, and you know what, he said everything, he made a lot of, he cursed, you know, like,
Mhm.
he said, like, sometimes he just would wake y'all up right here.
And tell me the Quran won't wake you up, right? Tell me the words of Allah saying He gonna guide you, you know, and point you in the right direction. And first thing I would do if I'm a Christian, I would open it up and say, let me see what they talking about Jesus, you know, like they can't know what they're talking about, you know.
You gotta be a devoted Christian that wants the truth. But,
Yeah.
You know, you got all these preachers out there, and they ain't trying to change.
Yeah, that's true.
The dollar bill.
Yeah, because of this, like I was saying, this prosperity gospel. They feel it's like the lottery. You know, that's why people play the lottery. They feel like I'm gonna get something. I can't wait. If I keep doing it, if I keep pulling this lever, God gonna give me something. You know, instead of saying, you know what I need to do? Maybe I need to work a little harder, or invest my money here, or do something else. The money just not gonna fall from the sky, no matter how many times you pray.
Another man one time used to say, hey, he said, no, don't tell me, I don't want to think. I don't want to think. They don't even want to think.
Don't tell me, right?
Because I don't want to think.
That's to some people. That is the worst thing you can do for them, though. You can do to them
Yeah.
is make them think. The truth is more powerful than any other weapon. I mean, you can punch somebody in the face; they'll be all right in the next week or the next couple of days. But when you punch them in the face with the truth, it lasts forever
Yeah.
and ever. And they, you know, like when people tell somebody something about themselves that they're in denial about. If it's something, you're a bad person, man. You do something wrong, and they tell them that, and then they might come back 2 years later, like, man, what you told me that time, that never really resonated with me. You know, it could make them resent them or make them change. You know, so when you tell somebody the truth about themselves or the truth about anything that they are in denial of, it definitely sticks with them. I had a friend of mine the other day. He told me, he said, you're a good guy, but you're not a good friend. I said, you know what I did? Yesterday I called him. I said, let's go out to lunch, man. I said, I'm trying to be a better friend, you know. But I'm like, what can I say to that? You know, I have other friends. Maybe they have a different perspective. But this guy, the relationship we have, I'm not a good friend to him. So I can try to fix that. Or say, you know what? No, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, so I'm going to try to fix it. So like you said, if you're receptive to it, then you'll try to change it.
Yeah.
All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.